What's up? I'm Jared Harris, and you're listening to episode 34 of Beats by Jer. I am absolutely thrilled to announce that today I am joined by one of the greatest singers and most prolific songwriters in modern rock. Today I am joined by none other than the one, the only, Myles Kennedy. I want to take a moment to thank the incredible team at The Spill magazine for securing this opportunity, along with PFA Entertainment Media and Marketing and Myles' team for making this happen. I am very fortunate to say that this is, in fact, my second time interviewing Myles, the first of which was in 2021 in support of his second solo album, The Ides of March. Before then, it was almost comical how many times I almost interviewed Myles between 2017 and then. Myles Kennedy is perhaps best known as the lead singer and rhythm guitarist of Alter Bridge, as well as the lead singer in Slash featuring Myles Kennedy and the Conspirators. In addition to an incredibly powerful voice with an impressive range, while demonstrating a masterful quality to the guitar, so much so that even Slash admits to looking up to him in this regard, Kennedy remains one of, if not the busiest musician in rock. Between 2009 to 2022, for example, not a single year went by without at least one studio or live album or EP from Kennedy, Slash, or Alter Bridge. Within this 13-year span, there were 22 separate releases, and 2018 stands as a milestone year that saw 2 separate studio albums as well as a live record. Most impressively, however, is the quality of such releases. Not only is there a frequency, but there is a high standard that all of these projects push for and achieve time after time. Whether it's with Alter Bridge, Slash, or his own solo work, Myles remains an impressive musical force. Highlights from his vast catalog include Alter Bridge's Fortress, One Day Remains, Blackbird, The Last Hero, and Live at the Royal Albert Hall featuring the Parallax Orchestra. Additionally, we're looking at records like Apocalyptic Love and World on Fire, both by Slash, featuring Myles Kennedy and the Conspirators. That being said, in 2018, Kennedy, not being busy enough, chose to release his debut solo album, Year of the Tiger. This album was largely acoustic, and it demonstrated Kennedy's artistry in an all-new light. The follow-up, 2021's The Ides of March, was a largely more contemporary effort that continued to develop a deeper level of Kennedy's musicality and voice as a songwriter. Now, as of October 11th, 2024, Kennedy has released his third solo record, The Art of Letting Go. Following a string of singles, Say What You Will, Nothing More to Say, Miss You When You're Gone, and Saving Face, for his third solo outing, Kennedy attempts to reconcile the blues with a harder, almost metal tone in incredible fashion that feels equally inspired by his work with Slash as it is with Alter Bridge. This is immediately clear on the title track, used to open the album and set listeners' expectations for a new era within Kennedy's discography. Highlights from the record include the driving Saving Face, the haunting balladry of Eternal Lullaby, the grungy album closer How the Story Ends, and the absolute masterpiece that is Behind the Veil. Most impressively, Kennedy's trio of solo albums can stand side by side with some of the greatest records from both Slash and Alter Bridge. He has done an exceptional job with this collection of work in showcasing himself as a much more versatile songwriter and performer, and The Art of Letting Go is no different in that regard. I am super thankful to have had an early access to this record. I've pretty much had it on repeat over the last 2 weeks, and it is among my favorite releases from this year. Without further ado, here is my conversation with Myles Kennedy. Myles Kennedy, welcome to Beats by Jer. Thank you so much for joining me today for this conversation for Beats by Jer, for the Spill magazine. Just thank you.
Wow, my pleasure. Thanks for your time. Thanks for having me.
Oh, anytime, literally. Anytime. Congrats on your upcoming album, upcoming at the time being The Art of Letting Go.
Thank you. Yeah,
I've,
it's hard to believe. It's almost release time.
I've been listening to it all weekend, all day today. It's a fantastic record.
Thank you.
Let's start with the title. I'm a little curious about that.
Yeah, it's the art of letting go. It just kind of sums up where I'm at this point in life. Just try, as you get older, you try to figure things out and apply some things to help you kind of navigate the treacherous waters of life. And I think what I've learned is letting go and learning not to be quite as reactive and attached to things is ideal for me. So it felt like an appropriate title that just kind of sums up where I'm at. And it's also nice to if you title a record with something you're working on from a philosophical standpoint, it helps remind you because you go out and you do press and you do, podcasts and interviews, and you're constantly talking about this. So in a way, it helps kind of strengthen whatever this is, wherever I'm trying to get psychologically. It helps just continue to remind me to go there.
Oh, interesting. So like it's more of a mindset type approach, and I mean,
Yeah.
you're carrying it through with the press. Very cool.
Yeah.
Uh, let's talk about the process, the writing and the recording behind the album.
Yeah, so the writing started for most of it, for like 80% of the record. There were a handful of tunes that were already pretty much complete prior to starting the creative journey. But started in January of 2023, and with a little different parameters than I'd allowed myself on the first two solo records. The first Year of the Tiger, which I did like 6 or 7 years ago, it was an acoustic affair, and when I
Fantastic record.
thank you very much. And I was intentionally trying to make something that was a departure from the things that I was known for, playing, with Slash and the Conspirators and with Alter Bridge. But as time went on, I just found myself asking the question, why can't you do that? I mean, why, you're a rock guy? You started as a rock guitar player as a kid. I mean, why aren't you writing some rock songs and making a full-on rock and roll record? And so I think that was a part of the thing I kind of structured early on, was just to allow myself to do that. And so it took about 6 months to get all the songs where I wanted them, and then we got in the studio about 3 months after that.
That's really interesting that you immediately went to the tone of the record because that's one of the things I noted down. This album to me felt very much like it was equally inspired by the type of rock, blues rock that you do with Slash, but also there's a heaviness to it, right? The way that you carry momentum from a double time verse into a halftime chorus. It's very reminiscent of what a lot of what you do with Alter Bridge, and I thought that was very different from the previous two records. Um, and I was wondering if that was like a very conscious decision to kind of like bridge these two things that you typically do and take them in a new meaningful direction.
Yeah, it was kind of like, so part of this the idea of making a riff based or blues riff based record was stemmed from a conversation that I had with our drum tech Mick, with the solo realm. We were out on the Ides of March record, and he realizes, since we were a trio when we toured, he's like, you guys basically reapproach the arrangements and you rock them out, because it's a trio. So there's certain things you do to make it dynamically so that it works. He says, have you ever thought about recording the entire record, recording all of these songs that way? Because I really like these arrangements. And I said, well, what if we just made a record of new tunes as they would be re-envisioned? So that was a lot of where it came from. But with that said, because, I'm one of the primary writers with both the bands you just brought up, and obviously I'm singing. So there's certain hallmarks that are going to be there that are going to run congruent with both those projects. So for me, the delicate dance was figuring out how to, you know, do it in a way where obviously the lines are going to be blurred at times, but make sure that you establish your own lane. And so that was fun. It was certainly challenging at times. I think with Alter Bridge, because we tend to go more almost, I don't want to say metal, but it gets a lot more aggressive. And there's more, if I can I recently was I'm reading the Keith Richards autobiography, Life.
Oh, love that one.
It's so good, and he talks about this idea of sometimes there's you've got the heavier rock side of things and you have the roll side of things, right? So with this, I'm trying to think more roll. There's the rock, but it also rolls, I feel like, more than it does with Alter Bridge. Now with Slash, there's a lot of roll.
Hmm, hmm.
It's that groove and it's that thing that he did playing from the hip. So I was actually more cognizant of like trying not to tread in that territory because it's blues based and it's riff based.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
and my voice. But here's the thing: it's if you don't have Slash in the equation, that there it is. He's the secret sauce there, right? So it's like just yeah, he's Slash.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I'm curious, you said that you wanted to make this record as if these songs would eventually be reimagined for the trio. Was there ever a point, like maybe in the early writing or the demo phase, where these arrangements were a lot more dense, a lot more geared towards a larger ensemble, and then you kind of changed the tone of the record, or was this kind of the thought going into it from the get-go?
It was a thought from the get go, and it's funny because on the Ides of March, I used my little studio environment to help write the songs. So I would create knowing what the end arrangement was to be, what there was going to be a lap steel here and there was going to be a banjo here, and it was like it was essentially demoing. It was very the pre, it was I was kind of doing pre-production at that point. But with this, I didn't do that. I didn't start demoing till I was knee deep in these songs, and I've been writing for 6 months. I just took my little amp, and when I was on the road, one of the little Spark practice amps, and a guitar, and my phone, and would the mantra was essentially, if the riff is great, if the riff is something that you find compelling that you can build upon, and you record these little snippets of ideas onto your phone, and then come back and revisit it, and if it's still standing, then you can build it into a song. But I was adamant about making sure that the foundation, the skeleton, and the riff in particular, had to have a certain gravity. So that was really important, and obviously the melody as well, as opposed to writing and being in the studio. I'm going, we can elevate this chorus once we put a contrary melody on it, or we sprinkle this keyboard or whatever it's going to be to help elevate it. It had to be about the foundation of the song. It had to stand all by itself, almost like you would approach writing an acoustic record in that sense, but you're using loud guitars. If that makes any sense
I mean,
whatsoever.
that's kind of the measure of just a great song, right? Is if you can take it into these different contexts and it can still stand, right?
It really is, right? I mean, if it can be broken down into its fundamental elements and it still works, then hopefully it'll translate.
Going back to what you said a little bit earlier, you had mentioned with Year of the Tiger, you wanted to do something drastically different from Alter Bridge, from Slash, from whatever you've done in the past. And the struggle was kind of recognizing that you are a rock artist and you can release a rock solo record. Um, what was the reason that you really wanted to go into such a alternate left field direction initially?
I think it's because as creative folks, we have all of these different sides of our persona that we want to explore, and I've been so incredibly lucky to have a career and continue to get to make records and continue to get to tour. And after a while, you're like, okay, well, now maybe I should explore this. But I'm gonna try. I need to do this for me. And so that's where I was with Year of the Tiger. I'd always loved acoustic music. Artists like Chris Whitley and people who approached it in a different. My favorite Chris Whitley record is a record called Dirt Floor, and it's just him and some resonators. And the way that record spoke to me, I remember telling myself, man, I would really love to attempt to do something like that one day. So it was just born out of necessity. I just had to explore that, and as this moves on in the solo realm, as it moving forward, I don't know what other itches I'll need to scratch. You know, maybe something more symphonic, maybe something, maybe I'll continue on this because I really am enjoying this particular approach. But the beauty of having a solo project is you have the ability to kind of do whatever you want to do and just hopefully evolve and grow and hopefully you'll still have something to say. Whereas with Alter Bridge and with Slash and Conspirators, you know, those are very established entities and I think the fans have come to expect certain hallmarks, you know. And so, you know, with that said, we'll continue to respect that and move forward. But with the solo stuff, you know, it's just you're kind of following the whims of your muse.
Makes sense. Yeah. With all of that in mind, considering how much music you're releasing like yearly, whether it's with these different bands, whether it's, live albums, you're always releasing music, which is super impressive in itself. But I mean, the quality of that music is significantly more so impressive than just the quantity. Um, I'm curious when you're writing, because I'm assuming you're just always writing something. Um, what makes you determine where a song will go? Like what to you makes a song a Myles Kennedy song compared to say an Alter Bridge song or a Slash song?
Yeah, I think it's the I don't know, there's just this it's like I just know. I can just feel it. Occasionally one will come along and you'll be like, "Oh, this might work with Alter Bridge," and you'll set it aside. But generally, it's just a different approach. And like I was saying earlier about the you know, if I'm going to write a riff for Alter Bridge, it's going to have. I'm probably going to detune it. I'm going to use a lot heavier strings. It's going to have less of a groove. It'll be a different kind of groove. I should put it that way. And with Slash, it's a totally different process because he presents the sonic, um, you know, foundation, right? And then I put the
Mhm.
melody and the lyric on top. So that's a really easy one. You know, it's I if the for like the people have brought up like on the first single of "Say What You Will," you know, did you think about possibly presenting that to Slash because it kind of has certain similarities? And I was like, you know what, why would I present anything to Slash as far as you know he's brilliant with riffs. He's got the guy is so prolific, it's crazy. So you know we have kind of an established way of working there, and that's not to say that Mark isn't equally gifted. You know, it's
Oh,
just that
absolutely.
the
Yeah.
way we've established the foundation there, we come together, and he the same way I'll bring in riffs, he'll also bring in some melodies, you know? So it's like, it's more of a kind of putting our strengths together and building that way. But yeah, occasionally a song will come along. There was the song Miss You When You're Gone on this record could have, could have worked with Alter Bridge maybe 15 years ago. But I feel like where we've moved as a band, it just wasn't appropriate. Um,
Mm.
so there, you know, sometimes time kind of changes things as well. You find that the certain entities just move into new territory.
Yeah, yeah. That's I hear it. I see exactly what you mean. Um, do you have a favorite song on the album?
I do. I really like Behind the Veil.
Oh, that was my favorite too.
Oh, right on.
I love that song. That is wow. I don't want to say it's like your best guitar playing I've heard on an album, but it's like it there's like that moment where you hear it and you're like, holy shit, like that's incredible. The solo, the introduction, the songwriting, how it starts clearly as a ballad and then transitions into something entirely different. Everything about that song was so unpredictable. Wow.
Thank you. Thank you.
Um,
No, I enjoy playing that. We just did some rehearsals getting ready for this tour, and that's the song I see on the list. I'm like, I can't wait because I get to play a long solo. And in live, I'm going to improvise a lot of that. So I'll play the solo eventually, but I'm going to stretch the middle section out and just improvise. And
oh,
you
cool.
know, yeah, I'm excited about that one.
Cool. Could we talk about the writing of that song a little bit? Like,
Sure.
was it ever a ballad, like a full ballad at one point, or?
So the bookends, so the intro and then the outro that was a little section I had sitting around for a while. Just didn't have a home for it. And when I stumbled onto the main riff when the band kicks in, that was something I came up with on the bus. And I remember my guitar tech came in. He's like, "Oh, I really like that." So I was like, "Okay, good," because I do too. So I'm gonna build that into something. But I wanted to introduce that riff with a a kind of a sonic preface. So that's how that came to be with that kind of clean guitar part at the beginning and at the end.
Hmm. It's I don't know, has anyone ever like compared your solo style to like Carlos Santana?
Oh man, well that's really nice to hear. No, but I'll take it. I'll take it. Yeah, I love Carlos. You know what I love about Carlos is the way he emotes, and there's a soulfulness, but it's also just he sings. It's as it, it's interesting. I was talking with Paul Smith, Paul Reed Smith about this a
Hmm.
while back, and he was like, Carlos can actually he's really great technically as well. Like he can be a real, you know, not a shredder. I don't think that's what he's saying, but he's got a certain technical ability that he doesn't showcase a lot, which I think is cool. I think it's cool that like we know him as this very emotive and melodic guitar player, but yet he's got that in his hip pocket as well that he can, play a flurry of notes when he needs to. And so the guys that I really enjoy listening to are kind of cut from the same cloth in that sense, where they've got a melodic sense and a soulfulness, but they can punctuate with a flurry of notes. I really enjoy hearing that.
Yeah, I mean, I heard all of that on that solo. So much so that I was checking the press kit to see if there was a guest feature. Like, not
Oh
because it was
wow.
like, I don't know if Miles can do it, but it was like, this sounds so much like Santana. Like, I was totally looking for that, but like, that was an incredible solo.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Man, that means a lot.
Um, so you mentioned the tour. At the end of the month, you're off to Europe, and then you have the North American leg starting in January next year. January 22nd, you're in Toronto at the concert hall. I will be there. Super
Awesome.
stoked. What should fans expect from this tour?
Well, it's going to be a rock and roll tour, that's for sure. And I think that kind of going along with what we were just talking about, not on every song and not on every solo, but I do want to incorporate more of the improvisational side of things. And I don't really get to do that a lot with Alter Bridge and with Slash. Obviously, he's got that covered. He's playing killer lead guitar, and I'm singing, just trying to keep up with him really. But it's like with this it's going to be about stretching things out, and the idea that with some of these songs, I'll never play the solo the same again, like, and that would be one of those
Fantastic.
songs where I'll play it a certain way one night and then I'll never do it that way again. Now I'll bring in the actual solo eventually, because especially hearing what you just said, it's like I've been to shows where guys are improvisers, and then they don't play those key hooks, and I'll
Mm.
try and incorporate that as well. But I love that. I came from a kind of a bit of a fusion and jazz background, and so I like getting to stretch out and
Oh, no
improvise.
way. Yeah.
Yeah. I was kind of a fusion jazz nerd in my late teens, early 20s, and I actually have a degree in jazz studies, and so
Whoa.
I'm a
That's
nerd.
I also went to jazz school. That's crazy.
Oh wow, no
Yeah.
kidding.
Wow.
That's
I
very
never knew
cool.
that.
Do you have any so who are like any jazz artists that your holy grail guys?
Uh I mean, John Coltrane, I would say is number
Yeah.
one. Yeah,
Yeah,
John
right.
Coltrane. But
That's
I really
brilliant.
love what Kamasi Washington is doing these days. I
Okay.
mean, I've like for the last 10 years, but especially in the last year or so. Miles, of course.
Right.
I mean, he's from the same era, but I find he doesn't get nearly as much love as Thelonious Monk.
Oh, I totally agree. I totally agree. He does not get the he yeah, I'm totally on the same page.
Oh, cool, cool. Um, Bringing it back to your tour though, your dates look like, at least what's been announced so far, they come to an end in April.
Hmm.
Curiously, Creed is also wrapping up their tour around the same time. Are there plans for Alter Bridge to reconvene next year?
We're trying to figure that out. Yeah, we're trying to figure out with everybody's schedule if the April slowdown time will stay that way, right? So yeah, there's been talks of trying to get back in the studio and get the machine up and running again. But I think that
Sweet.
it's been great to see just how successful that reunion has been for those.
Yeah, it's been
It's
huge for
yeah,
them.
it's massive, and so personally, I think they should ride that out as long as humanly possible. You take advantage of it.
Yeah, why not, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Similarly, Todd Kearns shared, I want to say like on Instagram, like maybe a week ago that him, Brent, and Slash were working on the next record. Do you
Yes.
anything to say about that?
Yeah. So we started chipping away at tunes when we were on this last tour, first part of this year. So had some things started, and then those guys are now continuing to develop the ideas musically, and then I basically get like um, uh, a demo of what's happening so that I can start thinking about what I'm gonna do melodically and lyrically. So they'll probably get their stuff documented, like as far as recorded, much earlier than I will because I'm embarking on this tour. So for me, the
Mm,
question is when I'll be able to go in and finish, basically add my parts. And
makes
it's
sense.
right
Yeah.
now, yeah, we're just trying to carve out a window.
Yeah. And a bit of a sidetrack here, but on the topic of Slash, I was researching for this conversation, and I read that I had never heard this before, and it totally threw me off, but I read that you were approached not once, but twice for joining Velvet Revolver. Um, can you elaborate on this?
Yeah. So in 2002, he reached out and sent some demos before they got together with Weil, and they were
And
just
this
looking.
is this is pre-Alter Bridge 2002.
Yeah, this is pre-Alter Bridge. So this was like, I think it was like, I think it's like spring or summer of 2002. And long story short, I was at a weird point then. I spent 5 years at Epic with the Mayfield Four, and I was really disillusioned and just kind of not sure what I wanted to do. And he sent the demos, and then I came with some melodies and some lyrics and recorded them. But I stepped back and listened. I was like, I don't feel like I'm ready for some of this magnitude. And I just didn't really feel like I had anything to bring to the party. And so I was honored. I told him, I was like, being that I'm the fan that I am of their legacy and everything they've done, I felt like it was disingenuous to throw my hat in the ring. So I didn't. I just never sent the demo out. Like
Hmm.
no one's heard that demo, the demo that I put the vocals on. So fast forward about 7 years later, and it was the first time Creed got back together. It was after I'd jammed with John Paul Jones and Jimmy Page and Jason Bonham. So my name was kind of out there, and so Slash and the guys after Weiland and them parted ways when they were trying to figure out what they were going to do as Velvet Revolver, they reached out thinking that I had some like a window. Because of the Creed reunion and whatnot. But once again, it was a timing thing. And I also just look, I love Velvet Revolver. I loved seeing what Weiland brought to the party. And I just thought, am I the right guy could I do that? I don't know. So yeah, it wasn't sometimes you just got to go with your gut, but I was
That's there,
beyond honored.
there's so much that speaks to like your like personal and musical integrity with that. Like you're on one hand being courted by Zeppelin, and on the other hand, Slash and Velvet Revolver like come join us, and you're like you go with neither option, right? You follow where you wanted to go with, carving your own path. That's so interesting.
Well, it's also just knowing what your strengths and weaknesses are. And I feel like that's kind of what's helped me have a career is because you can make missteps. And I have made missteps. I've made mistakes. I've been in situations where I was like, oh, I don't know if that was if I'm I'm hypercritical of myself almost to a flaw. But
Mm,
sometimes that can save you heartache if you look at yourself in the mirror and go, you know what, you're not the right guy for this particular thing, and you have to just accept that.
fair, fair. The one final question I like to leave my guests with. What are your three desert island records?
Oh, it changes so much, but I would say,
Let's go for right now then.
all right, right now, I well, I would say Kind of Blue by Miles Davis. That,
Oh,
yeah, that's
it's a
just
classic.
the classic. I'm gonna say Grace by Jeff Buckley.
Oh, amazing.
Oh, it's so good. And then I'm gonna say Asia, Steely Dan.
Oh, wow. I never expected that pairing with
Yeah.
this conversation, but wow, those are some great choices.
Love those records.
Yeah. Okay, Miles. Well, thank you very much for joining me today on Beats by Jer. It was incredible to speak with you again. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Great questions, man. I enjoyed this a lot.
I'm so glad to hear that. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you for tuning in to my conversation with Myles Kennedy. Once again, I would like to thank Myles' team, PFA Entertainment, Media, and Marketing, and The Spill magazine for making this possible. The Art of Letting Go is available now on all digital platforms with various physical formats available at myleskennedy.com. Join me in a few weeks for another new and exciting episode. I'm Jared Harris, and this is Beats by Jer.